Elliot Harper adjusted the antique clock on his modest mantel, its rhythmic ticking filling the silence of his apartment. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through lace curtains, casting a golden hue over the small, tidy living room. Every piece of furniture told a story. The walnut bookshelf he had built decades ago, filled with dusty volumes, the armchair with frayed fabric that had once belonged to his late wife, Margaret. At 73, Elliot lived a life defined by routine and solitude, a quiet retreat from the noise of the world. The days in his suburban Chicago neighborhood followed a predictable rhythm. Each morning, Elliot would walk to the corner cafe where he sipped black coffee while reading the newspaper. The barista, a bright-eyed young woman named Lucy, always greeted him with a warm smile and a free refill. Elliot, a retired high school history teacher, was well-liked but kept to himself, preferring the company of books and his memories over social engagements. On this particular day, Elliot returned home earlier than usual. His knees, weakened by arthritis, ached from the long walk back. He settled into the armchair, massaging his joints as he gazed out the window. Across the street, children played basketball on the cracked pavement while their mothers chatted on porches. The sight reminded him of the past, of his own children, estranged and scattered across the country, living lives that rarely intersected with his own. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was a rare occurrence. Few visited Elliot without calling first. He shuffled to the entrance, his slippers dragging across the floor, and opened the door to find a delivery man holding an envelope. "Mr. Harper?" the young man asked. "Yes, that's me," Elliot replied, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. The man handed him the envelope and left without further explanation. Elliot stared at the heavy cream paper, his name written in elegant cursive. The return address bore the name Barnes and Associates, attorneys at law, a firm he had never heard of. With a mix of apprehension and intrigue, he carried the envelope to his desk and opened it. Inside was a formal letter. "Dear Mr. Harper, we regret to inform you of the recent passing of Mr. Nathaniel Walcott. As part of his last will and testament, you have been named in matters concerning his estate. We kindly request your presence at a reading of the will on the 15th of this month at the Walcott Manor in Lake Forest. Further details will be provided upon your arrival. Respectfully, Richard Barnes, Esq." Elliot read the letter twice, then a third time, trying to comprehend why his name was linked to a man he had never met. The name Nathaniel Walcott stirred no recognition, yet the formality of the letter and the precision of its language suggested authenticity. He placed the letter on the desk, his heart beating faster than usual. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. Elliot tried to busy himself with his usual activities, preparing a simple dinner, tending to his small garden, but the letter loomed large in his mind. It didn't make sense. His life had been unremarkable, marked by decades of teaching, raising children, and mourning Margaret's death. He had no connection to wealth or power, and certainly none to reclusive millionaires. That night, he struggled to sleep. As the city's hum faded into the quiet of the early hours, Elliot lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Questions raced through his mind. Who was Nathaniel Walcott? Why had he been named in the will? What did this mean for his carefully constructed life of peace and simplicity? He resolved to call the attorney's office the next morning. For now, all he could do was let the mysteries of the letter linger in the corners of his mind, stirring an unease he hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Elliot awoke earlier than usual, the letter still occupying his thoughts. As sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of his bedroom, he sat at the edge of the bed, his hands gripping the mattress. The day held a weight he couldn't quite name. He dressed in his usual routine, a clean button-down shirt, pressed slacks, and a cardigan that had seen better days. Still, He felt out of sorts, his movements slower, more deliberate, as though navigating an unfamiliar current. With a steaming mug of coffee in hand, he stared at the letter on his desk, its presence a sharp intrusion into his otherwise uneventful life. He picked it up again, running his fingers over the embossed header, the name Barnes & Associates gleaming faintly in the morning light. It was real. But why him? Determined to get answers, Elliot reached for the phone and dialed the number listed in the letter. His hand trembled slightly as he held the receiver to his ear. The line clicked, and a smooth, professional voice answered. "Barnes & Associates, how may I assist you?" "This is Elliot Harper," he began, his voice uncertain. "I received a letter regarding Mr. Nathaniel Walcott's will." "One moment, Mr. Harper," the voice replied, followed by a pause filled with soft, classical music. After a few moments, another voice took over, deeper and more authoritative. "Mr. Harper, this is Richard Barnes. Thank you for calling. I understand you have questions about the letter." "Yes," Elliot said, gripping the phone tighter. "I don't know Mr. Walcott. I believe there's been some mistake." "I assure you there is no mistake," Barnes replied, his tone calm but firm. "Your name was listed explicitly in Mr. Walcott's final instructions. While I cannot disclose specifics over the phone, I urge you to attend the reading of the will. I believe it will provide clarity." Elliot frowned. "Can you at least tell me why I'm involved? Did he know my family?" "I'm afraid that information will be addressed at the reading," Barnes said. "Please understand, Mr. Walcott was a private man. His final wishes were equally enigmatic." After a brief exchange of pleasantries, the call ended, leaving Elliot with more questions than answers. He sat at his desk, staring out the window at the modest garden he tended with care. The world outside seemed unchanged, children laughing, birds flitting between the trees, but within him something had shifted. He felt untethered, as if his life was no longer his own. Determined to regain control, Elliot decided to keep the matter to himself for now. He needed time to process what this meant, to weigh whether he would even attend the will reading. He busied himself with small tasks, pruning the roses in his garden, sweeping the porch, and repairing a loose hinge on his kitchen cabinet. Yet, no matter how much he tried, the letter remained a nagging presence in his mind. That evening, as he was taking out the trash, he ran into Linda, his young neighbor from across the hall. Linda was in her late 20s, juggling a job at a diner and raising her 6-year-old son, Danny. She was warm and kind, and over the years, she and Elliot had developed a bond. She often brought him leftovers from the diner, and he watched Danny when she worked late shifts. "Evening, Mr. Harper," she greeted him with a smile, balancing a grocery bag on her hip. "You look deep in thought." Elliot hesitated, considering whether to confide in her. "Just a bit of unexpected news," he said vaguely. Linda tilted her head, curious but respectful. "Good news, I hope." "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. "It's complicated." "Well, if you need someone to talk to, you know where I am," she said, flashing him a reassuring smile before disappearing into her apartment. That night, Elliot sat at his dining table, the letter and a cup of tea before him. He thought about the life he had built, simple, predictable, safe. The idea of traveling to Lake Forest, stepping into the orbit of a man like Nathaniel Walcott, felt overwhelming. Yet a part of him, a small, insistent voice, urged him to go. What if this letter held the key to a piece of his life he never knew was missing? Before going to bed, he made up his mind. He would attend the reading of the will. Answers were owed, and if nothing else, he needed to understand why a stranger had placed his name in such an unexpected position. The decision filled him with equal parts resolve and unease. Tomorrow, he would prepare for the journey. Whatever awaited him in Lake Forest, Elliot knew it would not leave his life unchanged. Elliot Harper sat by his kitchen window the next morning, staring at the neat rows of marigolds he had planted years ago. They swayed gently in the cool autumn breeze, their golden heads bobbing like they were nodding in agreement with the tumult of thoughts racing through his mind. The decision to attend the reading of Nathaniel Walcott's will had been made, but it was far from a comfortable one. What would he find there? A mistake, perhaps. Or worse, a revelation that would upset the fragile peace of his carefully managed life. The faint hum of the radio on the counter filled the silence. It played an old jazz tune, something Margaret had loved. Elliot turned the volume up, seeking its comfort. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment, letting the saxophone's mournful notes soothe the fraying edges of his nerves. After breakfast, he pulled a battered suitcase from the hall closet. The leather was cracked, and the brass latches creaked as he opened it. He hadn't used it in years, not since he had visited his daughter in California, a trip that ended in an argument neither of them had been willing to resolve. As he packed a few shirts, slacks, and his toiletries, memories of that visit surfaced unbidden. His daughter's sharp words about his inability to move on from the past echoed in his mind, stirring the lingering ache of estrangement. Elliot paused, his hand resting on the suitcase lid. "This is different," he muttered to himself, as if trying to convince the quiet apartment. "This isn't about the past. It's something else." His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He opened it to find Linda standing there, holding a plate of freshly baked muffins. Her son, Danny, peeked out from behind her, a shy smile on his face. "Morning, Mr. Harper," Linda said, her voice cheerful. "I made too many of these. Thought you might like some for the road." Elliot chuckled, taking the plate. "Thank you, Linda. And how do you know I'm heading anywhere?" "You've been quieter than usual. And then I saw that old suitcase," she said, motioning to it behind him. "Figured you might be off to visit family or something." Elliot hesitated, weighing how much to share. "Not family, exactly. I've been invited to the reading of a will." Linda raised her eyebrows, clearly intrigued. "A will? Sounds serious. Someone you knew well?" "No," Elliot admitted, shaking his head. "I never even met the man." "That's odd," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "But maybe it's fate. You know, one of those moments life throws at you to shake things up." "Maybe," he replied, though the thought felt more unsettling than reassuring. Linda gave him a smile and a pat on the shoulder. "Well, if you need anything while you're gone, just let me know. And bring me back a story. I love a good mystery." Elliot managed to smile in return. "I'll see what I can do." After they left, the house felt too quiet again. He glanced at the clock and realized he had little time to spare. Grabbing his suitcase and coat, he locked the door behind him and headed to the train station. The journey to Lake Forest was uneventful, yet Elliot couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. The passing scenery, with its stretches of fields and suburban developments, seemed to blur together. He found himself gripping the letter from Barnes & Associates tightly, as though it were a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. When the train pulled into the station, a car was waiting for him, a sleek, black vehicle with a uniformed driver holding a sign with his name. The sight unsettled him further. He wasn't accustomed to such formalities. The driver, a man in his 50s with a polite but distant demeanor, loaded Elliot's suitcase into the trunk and opened the door for him. The drive to Walcott Manor was both picturesque and eerie. The estate was surrounded by towering oaks, their gnarled branches forming a canopy over the winding driveway. The house itself came into view slowly, a sprawling, ivy-covered mansion that seemed to belong to another era. Its grandeur was undeniable, but so was its air of isolation. Elliot stepped out of the car, his breath catching slightly at the sheer scale of the place. The driver handed him his suitcase and gestured toward the front door, where a man in a tailored suit waited. "Mr. Harper," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Richard Barnes." "Thank you for coming." Elliot shook his hand, noting the firm grip and keen eyes that seemed to assess him in an instant. "I have to admit, I'm still not sure why I'm here." "All in good time," Barnes replied with a small smile. "Please, come inside. The other guests have already arrived." Guests. The word lingered ominously as Elliot followed Barnes into the manor. The grand foyer was a maze of marble and mahogany, with a sweeping staircase that seemed to ascend into infinity. The voices of others echoed faintly from a distant room, their tones tense and sharp. Elliot's heart quickened as he realized he was about to step into something far larger than himself, something he couldn't yet understand. As Barnes led him down the hallway toward the room where the others waited, Elliot braced himself for whatever truths lay ahead. Elliot Harper followed Richard Barnes through the dimly lit hallways of Walcott Manor, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on his shoulders. The grandeur of the house, with its polished oak paneling and ornate chandeliers, felt oppressive rather than inviting. Paintings of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their gazes following him as he walked. The faint murmur of voices grew louder as they approached a large set of double doors at the end of the corridor. Barnes stopped and turned to face Elliot. "Before we go in, Mr. Harper, I must caution you. The atmosphere among the other attendees is tense. This is an unusual situation for all involved." Elliot nodded, though his unease deepened. "I still don't understand why I'm here." "You'll begin to, soon enough," Barnes replied, his expression unreadable. He opened the doors and gestured for Elliot to step inside. The room was vast and cold, dominated by a long mahogany table surrounded by high-backed chairs. At the head of the table sat a portrait of Nathaniel Walcott, larger than life and painted with meticulous detail. The man in the portrait looked formidable, sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and a slight smirk that suggested he held more secrets than he would ever tell. Around the table, the other guests turned to look at Elliot as he entered. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. The group was small but intimidating, a well-dressed older woman with silver hair and a disdainful glare, a man in his 40s with a carefully tailored suit and a permanent scowl, and a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, whose nervous energy betrayed her discomfort. Barnes cleared his throat to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Elliot Harper." The older woman, seated closest to the head of the table, narrowed her eyes. "And why, exactly, is he here, Mr. Barnes?" Her voice was icy, each word precise. Barnes remained calm. "Mr. Harper has been named in Mr. Walcott's will, just as each of you has." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Elliot hesitated, unsure whether to sit or stand. The young woman offered him a tentative smile and gestured to the chair beside her. Grateful for the small kindness, Elliot took the seat. The older woman turned her attention to him, her tone sharp. "I'm Evelyn Walcott, Nathaniel's niece. I don't believe we've met." "We haven't," Elliot replied, keeping his voice even. "I didn't know Mr. Walcott." "Then why are you here?" Evelyn demanded, her eyes narrowing further. Elliot hesitated, unsure how to answer. Barnes interjected smoothly, "All will be explained in due course. Ms. Walcott, if we could begin." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, clearly displeased but willing to wait. Barnes moved to the head of the table, where a thick envelope rested. He opened it carefully and pulled out several sheets of paper, the rustling of parchment the only sound in the room. "As you all know," Barnes began, "Mr. Nathaniel Walcott was a man of considerable wealth and a reclusive nature. His final wishes reflect his unique character and Perhaps his sense of humor. The man in the tailored suit, who had been silent until now, scoffed. "Get to the point, Barnes. We all know he loved his games." Barnes ignored the interruption. "To proceed, I will read the following passage directly from Mr. Walcott's will." He adjusted his glasses and began reading. "To my niece, Evelyn Walcott, I leave the Walcott Manor and its contents, save for those specifically designated elsewhere. To my nephew, Andrew Walcott, I leave my shares in the Walcott Family Company, contingent upon his adherence to ethical business practices." Andrew, the man in the suit, smirked but said nothing. Barnes continued, "And to Mr. Elliot Harper, I leave a significant portion of my liquid assets, as well as the responsibility of uncovering a truth that has long remained hidden." The room erupted into chaos. Evelyn shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is outrageous. Who is this man, and why would Uncle Nathaniel leave him anything?" Andrew folded his arms, his smirk replaced with a scowl. "He's clearly some opportunist. This must be a mistake." Elliot, overwhelmed, looked to Barnes for answers. "What does this mean? I don't understand." Barnes raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. "Please, everyone, settle down. Mr. Walcott's wishes are explicit. Mr. Harper's role will become clear as we proceed." Evelyn's voice dripped with venom. "This is a travesty. Uncle Nathaniel always did enjoy stirring up trouble, but this is beyond the pale." The young woman beside Elliot leaned toward him and whispered, "I'm Clara. Don't mind them. They've been fighting over Uncle Nathaniel's fortune for years." Elliot nodded weakly, her words doing little to ease his discomfort. Barnes continued reading, outlining additional details of the will, but Elliot found it hard to focus. His mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what he had just heard. Why would a man he'd never met leave him such a fortune? And what was this truth he was supposed to uncover? As the reading concluded, Barnes closed the will and looked around the room. "You may all stay at the manor for the next few days as we finalize the legal proceedings. I encourage you to use this time to reflect and perhaps to consider Mr. Walcott's intentions." Evelyn stormed out, Andrew not far behind. Clara stayed seated, her gaze fixed on the portrait of Nathaniel. Elliot remained rooted to his chair, unsure of what to do next. The walls of the room seemed to close in on him, the weight of expectation settling heavily on his shoulders. The room emptied slowly, the sound of Evelyn's heels echoing through the halls as she stormed away. Andrew followed, muttering under his breath, leaving Elliot and Clara alone at the long mahogany table. Richard Barnes lingered at the head, quietly organizing the documents from the will, as though the confrontation that had just unfolded were an everyday occurrence. Elliot sat motionless, staring at his hands resting on the table. His world, so carefully contained until now, felt like it had cracked open, exposing him to something vast and incomprehensible. He had never sought wealth or intrigue. He had lived his life quietly, avoiding trouble and embracing simplicity. Yet here he was, inexplicably tied to a man he had never met, thrust into a web of strained familial relationships and cryptic instructions. "Are you all right?" Clara's soft voice broke through his thoughts. Elliot glanced at her. Her face was kind, her expression one of genuine concern. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I don't understand any of this." "Uncle Nathaniel was—" Clara paused, searching for the right words. "Let's just say he had a way of surprising people. But this is unusual, even for him." "Unusual is one way to put it," Elliot said, his voice laced with disbelief. Barnes cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Mr. Harper, I realize this is overwhelming. If you'd like, I can provide you with additional context about Mr. Walcott's life and his relationship to those named in the will." Elliot frowned. "You mean his family?" "Partially," Barnes replied, "but also his broader connections. Mr. Walcott was a complicated man. Elliot shook his head, exhaling slowly. I'm not sure I want to know. I don't even understand why I'm here. Barnes studied him for a moment before speaking. Mr. Walcott was deliberate in his decisions. He believed you had a role to play, though the specifics of that role will likely unfold in time. If I may, I suggest you remain here for a few days, as the will allows. This estate holds answers you may not yet realize you're seeking. Elliot wanted to protest, to insist that this had nothing to do with him, but something stopped him. There was a weight to Barnes's words, a quiet confidence that suggested he knew more than he was saying. And then there was that part of Elliot, buried deep, that was drawn to the mystery of it all. I'll stay, he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. Barnes nodded. I'll have the staff prepare a room for you. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. After Barnes left, Clara remained seated across from Elliot, her hands folded in her lap. I think you made the right choice, she said. Uncle Nathaniel never did anything without a reason. Elliot raised an eyebrow. You seem to have more faith in him than the others. Clara hesitated, then shrugged. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of all the fighting. Evelyn and Andrew have been arguing about his fortune for years. It's exhausting. Elliot leaned back in his chair, studying her. And what about you? Where do you fit into all this? She smiled faintly. I'm the outsider, mostly. My father, Nathaniel's youngest brother, died when I was a kid. I didn't spend much time with this side of the family growing up. I guess I've always felt like I was watching from the sidelines. Elliot nodded, understanding the sentiment. I've never been part of anything like this. It's overwhelming. Clara's smile softened. It can be, but maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Uncle Nathaniel had a way of surprising people, even after he was gone. Their conversation was interrupted by a young man in a butler's uniform entering the room. Mr. Harper, Miss Walcott, your rooms are ready, if you'll follow me. Elliot rose slowly, his legs feeling heavy as he followed the butler through the maze-like halls of the manor. Clara walked beside him, her presence a small comfort in the vast, unfamiliar space. The room he was shown to was grander than anything he had ever stayed in. A four-poster bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, and furniture that looked older than he was. After the butler left, Elliot placed his suitcase on the bed and sank into the nearby armchair. The events of the day swirled in his mind, each question more perplexing than the last. Who was Nathaniel Walcott, really? And what connection did he have to Elliot's life? The answers seemed as distant as the stars visible through the tall windows. As night fell, the house grew quiet, the earlier tension giving way to an eerie stillness. Elliot paced the room, his thoughts restless. He opened the suitcase, intending to unpack, when his hand brushed against something tucked into the corner. Pulling it out, he found a photograph, a black-and-white picture of his mother, Margaret Harper, as a young woman. He stared at the image, his heart pounding. He didn't remember packing this. Turning it over, he saw a note scrawled in faded ink, "For Nathaniel, with love." Elliot's breath caught. He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, the photograph trembling in his hands. A memory stirred at the edge of his mind, faint and elusive. This changed everything. Elliot Harper sat at the edge of the bed, the photograph clutched tightly in his trembling hands. The discovery of his mother's picture with that enigmatic inscription, "For Nathaniel with love," was like a spark igniting a long-forgotten corner of his memory. How could she have known Nathaniel Walcott, and why had she never mentioned him? His mother had been an ordinary woman, kind and practical, devoted to her family. The idea that she had a connection to this wealthy, reclusive man was almost too much to comprehend. The soft knock at the door startled him, and he hastily slipped the photograph back into his suitcase. "Come in," he called, trying to compose himself. The door opened to reveal Richard Barnes, carrying a slim, leather-bound folder. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, Mr. Harper." Elliot shook his head. "No, not at all. Please, come in." Barnes stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "I wanted to provide you with some additional context about Mr. Walcott's estate. And he hesitated briefly, to offer some insight into why you might be here." Elliot gestured to the armchair by the window. "Go on, I'm listening." Barnes sat, opening the folder and withdrawing a single sheet of paper. Mr. Walcott was a deeply private man, but he maintained meticulous records. He was also a man of strong convictions, particularly about family, even if he didn't always express them openly. Elliot's brow furrowed. "Family? Are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting nothing definitive," Barnes interrupted gently, "but I do know that Mr. Walcott carried regrets about relationships he left unresolved. His will is as much about settling financial matters as it is about addressing those regrets." Elliot leaned forward, his voice steady but edged with suspicion. "Why me? I've never met him, never heard of him." "I don't see how any of this connects to my life." Barnes regarded him carefully, then slid the paper across the table. It was a faded document, a letter addressed to Nathaniel from someone named Eleanor Harper. The handwriting was elegant, the tone intimate. "Dearest Nathaniel, though the years have passed, I find myself thinking of you often. The choices we made, the ones we were forced to make, still haunt me. Perhaps one day the truth will find its way to light. Until then, know that I have carried our shared secret close to my heart." Barnes gave Elliot a moment to absorb the words before speaking. "Does the name Eleanor Harper mean anything to you?" Elliot's hands clenched the paper. "Eleanor was my mother's younger sister. She died when I was a boy." Barnes nodded, his expression softening. Nathaniel often referred to Eleanor in his journals, though he never shared details with anyone else. "I suspect she may hold a key to understanding his connection to you." Elliot stared at the letter, his mind racing. His aunt had been a quiet presence in his childhood, a woman of gentle words and mysterious silences. He had always thought of her as a shadow compared to his mother's vibrant personality. Could she have been the link between his family and Nathaniel Walcott? Barnes rose, his voice steady. "I don't mean to overwhelm you, Mr. Harper, but I believe that the answers you seek lie here in this house. Mr. Walcott's instructions were clear. You are to uncover the truth, whatever that may be." Elliot felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He was no detective, no seeker of hidden histories. Yet here he was, in a house full of strangers, holding fragments of a puzzle he hadn't even known existed. After Barnes left, Elliot remained seated, the letter still in his hands. The room felt colder now, the walls pressing in as his thoughts churned. A sudden knock at the door broke his reverie. He opened it to find Clara standing there, her face hesitant but kind. "I thought you might want some company," she said, holding up a small bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "This place has a way of making you feel like you're losing your mind." Elliot hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. "I could use the distraction." They sat by the window, the whiskey warming their hands as the conversation flowed. Clara shared stories about her childhood, the strained dynamics of the Walcott family, and the immense pressure Nathaniel's wealth had placed on everyone around him. Elliot listened, his own walls slowly lowering. When it was his turn, he spoke of his late wife, Margaret, and the years he had spent teaching history, a life he had thought was quiet and unremarkable until now. "You're more connected to all of this than you realize," Clara said thoughtfully, pouring them another drink. "Uncle Nathaniel never did anything without a purpose. If he brought you here, It's because he knew you had a part to play. Elliot shook his head, a weary smile tugging at his lips. I'm just a retired teacher. I don't belong in this world. Maybe that's exactly why you do, Clara countered, her gaze steady. The night deepened as they talked, the storm of questions and doubts momentarily giving way to a rare sense of camaraderie. When Clara left, Elliot returned to his suitcase. He pulled out the photograph of his mother and studied it again under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Whatever secrets Nathaniel Walcott had kept, Elliot now felt certain that they were tied to his family's past, and perhaps to his own identity in ways he had never imagined. Tomorrow, he resolved, he would begin to uncover the truth. Morning at Walcott Manor arrived quietly, the house blanketed in an uneasy stillness that seemed to echo the tension brewing among its guests. Elliot Harper dressed slowly, his movements deliberate as his thoughts churned. The photograph of his mother, the cryptic letter from Eleanor, and Richard Barnes's enigmatic revelations had woven a web of mystery that Elliot was determined to untangle. He could no longer sit on the sidelines of this peculiar situation. There were questions that needed answers, and he was resolved to find them. As he descended the grand staircase, the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted through the air. The dining room was a picture of restrained elegance, with its long oak table set for breakfast. Evelyn and Andrew were already seated, their expressions guarded, their postures stiff. Clara arrived shortly after Elliot, offering him a small, encouraging smile as they took seats across from one another. "Good morning," Elliot said, his tone polite but wary. Evelyn barely acknowledged him, lifting her teacup with the air of someone who had decided to endure an unpleasant chore. Andrew, on the other hand, leaned forward, his eyes sharp with suspicion. "You've decided to stay then," Andrew said, his tone laced with condescension. "I have," Elliot replied evenly, refusing to rise to the bait. "And why, may I ask?" Evelyn's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "You've made it clear you didn't know Uncle Nathaniel. What could you possibly hope to gain from lingering here?" Elliot hesitated, weighing his response. "I'm not sure yet," he said honestly. "But if Mr. Walcott thought I had a role to play, I owe it to him and myself to find out why." Evelyn scoffed, setting her cup down with a clatter. Typical. Uncle Nathaniel always did have a flair for the dramatic. Bringing in a complete stranger to disrupt everything, well, it's exactly the sort of chaos he thrived on. Clara shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between her relatives. "Maybe we should give Mr. Harper a chance. Uncle Nathaniel must have had his reasons." Andrew smirked. "You're too soft, Clara. This is nothing more than another one of his games." Before Elliot could respond, Barnes entered the room, his presence commanding instant attention. He carried a folder under his arm and addressed the group with calm authority. "Good morning, everyone. I trust you've had a chance to settle in." Evelyn's icy gaze turned to him. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries, Mr. Barnes. What's the next step in this farce?" Barnes remained unruffled. "The next step, Mrs. Walcott, is for each of you to begin the process of understanding Mr. Walcott's intentions. As stated in the will, Mr. Harper's involvement is key to this." Elliot felt the weight of every eye in the room settle on him. He met Barnes's gaze, seeking clarity. "What exactly does that mean?" Barnes opened the folder and withdrew a single sheet of paper. Mr. Walcott left behind a set of tasks, clues, if you will, that he believed would lead to the resolution of matters he considered unfinished. "Mr. Harper, you are at the center of these instructions." Evelyn threw up her hands. "More riddles, of course." Andrew crossed his arms, his expression sour. "And if we refuse to indulge these tasks?" Barnes's tone didn't waver. Refusal is, of course, an option, but I remind you that the execution of the will is contingent on fulfilling Mr. Walcott's terms. Ignoring them would mean forfeiting your inheritance." The room fell silent, the implication clear. Evelyn and Andrew exchanged glances, their hostility momentarily overshadowed by a shared recognition of what was at stake. Clara looked at Elliot, her expression a mix of curiosity and sympathy. "What kind of tasks are we talking about?" Elliot asked, his voice steady despite the unease creeping up his spine. Barnes set the paper on the table, pushing it toward him. "This is the first of them. Mr. Walcott was specific that you should begin here." Elliot picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the elegant handwriting. It was a short note, written in a tone that felt both formal and deeply personal. "Elliot, the truth you seek is layered, hidden within this house and beyond. Begin in the East Wing, where memories linger and secrets yearn to be found. Trust your instincts. The past will guide you." Elliot looked up, his heart pounding. "The East Wing?" Barnes nodded. "It has been closed off for years. Mr. Walcott rarely ventured there in his later life, though he kept it meticulously preserved. The staff will unlock it for you." Evelyn's laughter was cold and sharp. "So, we're to dig through Uncle Nathaniel's old treasures like scavengers. How fitting." Clara leaned toward Elliot, her voice soft. The East Wing was his favorite part of the house when he was younger. It meant something to him. Elliot folded the note, slipping it into his pocket. "I suppose I'd better start, then." Clara stood as well, surprising everyone. "I'll help. Uncle Nathaniel may have left these tasks for you, but it feels like something he'd want us to do together." Evelyn rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, but neither Elliot nor Clara paid her any mind. Barnes gave Elliot a small nod, his expression approving. "Good luck, Mr. Harper. I suspect you'll find more than you expect." As Elliot and Clara made their way toward the East Wing, he couldn't help but feel a strange mix of dread and anticipation. He had spent his entire life avoiding the unknown, finding comfort in routine and predictability. Now, with Clara by his side and a house full of secrets waiting to be uncovered, he was stepping into uncharted territory. The East Wing of Walcott Manor had an air of abandonment, a silent, forgotten corner of the grand estate. Dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight streaming through tall, narrow windows, casting an ethereal glow over the heavy velvet curtains and antique furniture draped in white sheets. Elliot Harper hesitated at the threshold, his hand resting on the ornate brass doorknob, the note from Nathaniel Walcott, a folded presence in his pocket. Beside him, Clara stood with her arms crossed, her face a mixture of curiosity and determination. "This part of the house always gave me the creeps," Clara admitted as she nudged open the door. The hinges groaned in protest, the sound echoing through the empty halls. Elliot stepped inside cautiously, the musty air filling his lungs. "Why was it closed off?" Clara shrugged. "Uncle Nathaniel never said, but he stopped using it years ago, and no one questioned it. Evelyn always said it was pointless to maintain a wing he didn't use." They moved deeper into the space, their footsteps muffled by the threadbare carpet. The decor was markedly different from the rest of the manor, less opulent, more personal. A faded floral wallpaper adorned the walls, and family photographs lined the shelves. Elliot paused in front of one. A younger Nathaniel stood beside a woman with delicate features and kind eyes. "That's Eleanor," Clara said softly, noticing his gaze. "Your aunt, right?" Elliot nodded, his throat tight. Seeing her image brought a flood of half-formed memories, her laughter, her gentle touch, the way she would hum while baking cookies. She had been a fleeting figure in his life, but her warmth had left an indelible mark. "Why would he keep her picture here?" Elliot asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara tilted her head, studying the photograph. Maybe this was a place where he kept things that mattered to him, things he couldn't show the rest of the family. Elliot's thoughts swirled with questions, but he kept moving. The east wing stretched on, revealing a series of rooms, each more intriguing than the last. One was a small library, its shelves filled with worn books, some with handwritten notes scrawled in the margins. Another was a sitting room, with a grand piano covered in dust. Clara ran her fingers over the keys, producing a faint, discordant melody. "It feels like he left this place in a hurry," she murmured. Elliot said nothing, his attention drawn to a door at the end of the hall. It was locked, the handle refusing to budge no matter how hard he tried. "Let me see," Clara said, stepping forward. She examined the lock, then glanced at the key Elliot had received from Barnes. "Do you think this might work?" Elliot pulled the key from his pocket and slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly, the click of the mechanism sounding impossibly loud in the quiet. He pushed the door open to reveal a small study. The air inside was colder, as though it had been sealed off from the warmth of the house. The room was sparsely furnished, a desk, a chair, and a single bookshelf. On the desk sat a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age. Elliot approached it slowly, his fingers brushing over the worn surface before opening it. The pages were filled with Nathaniel's handwriting, neat and precise. The entries ranged from mundane observations about the weather to deeply personal reflections. One passage caught Elliot's attention. "I often wonder what might have been if I had chosen differently. Eleanor deserved more than I could give her. And Elliot's breath caught. The entry trailed off, as though Nathaniel had hesitated to put his thoughts into words. Clara leaned over his shoulder, reading silently. "What does it mean?" she asked. "I don't know," Elliot said, his voice trembling. "But it sounds like he was trying to say something about my family." Clara pointed to another passage on the page. "Look, he mentions the chest in the attic. Do you think it's still there?" Elliot scanned the entry, which referenced an old cedar chest where Nathaniel had stored memories too painful to bear. His pulse quickened. "If it is, we need to find it." The two of them left the study and retraced their steps through the east wing. The silence of the house felt heavier now, as though it were watching them, holding its breath. They found the narrow staircase leading to the attic, its wooden steps creaking beneath their weight. The attic was vast, its slanted ceiling filled with cobwebs and the faint smell of mothballs. Trunks, crates, and forgotten relics of the Walcott family's past were stacked haphazardly, illuminated by a single bare bulb that flickered weakly. "There," Clara said, pointing to a large cedar chest pushed against the far wall. Elliot approached it cautiously, his heart pounding. The chest was secured with a rusty padlock, but the same key opened it with a soft click. He lifted the lid to reveal its contents: letters, photographs, and a faded baby blanket embroidered with the initials E.H. Clara picked up the blanket, her expression softening. "Eleanor Harper," she said. "This must have belonged to her." Elliot dug deeper, pulling out a stack of letters bound with twine. He untied them, his hands shaking as he read the first one. It was from Nathaniel, addressed to Eleanor, and dated decades before Elliot was born. The words were filled with longing, regret, and a secret that lay just beneath the surface. "Elliot," Clara said, her voice urgent, "look at this." She handed him a photograph, its edges worn. It showed Eleanor holding a baby, her expression one of serene joy. Beside her stood Nathaniel, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. The baby's features were unmistakable. It was Elliot. He stared at the photo, his world tilting on its axis. "This can't be," he whispered. I don't understand." Clara placed a hand on his arm. Maybe Uncle Nathaniel was more than just a family friend to Eleanor. Maybe he was part of your story all along. Elliot felt a swirl of emotions, shock, confusion, and a growing determination to uncover the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they formed was far more complicated than he could have imagined. Elliot Harper descended the attic stairs slowly, the photograph of Eleanor, Nathaniel, and the infant clutched tightly in his hand. Clara followed close behind, the baby blanket folded carefully over her arm. The stillness of the house seemed amplified now, as if Walcott Manor itself was holding its breath, waiting for Elliot to process the revelations uncovered in the cedar chest. In the sitting room, Elliot sank into an armchair, staring at the photograph as though it might explain itself if he looked hard enough. Clara sat opposite him, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Elliot shook his head, the weight of the discovery pressing on his chest. "This doesn't make sense. Nathaniel couldn't have been my father. My parents they were ordinary people. Honest, hard-working. They would have told me." Clara hesitated. Would they? Sometimes people hide things to protect the ones they love. The words stung. Elliot had always believed in the integrity of his family, the transparency of their modest lives. But this photograph and the letters he had barely begun to read suggested a story far more complex than he had imagined. He looked up at Clara. Why would Nathaniel keep this hidden? If he was involved in my family's life, why didn't he reach out? Why bring me here now, when he's gone? Clara leaned forward, her voice soft but steady. "Maybe he wanted you to discover the truth on your own. Maybe he thought this was the only way to make amends." Elliot frowned, his mind swimming with questions. "Amends for what?" Clara hesitated again, then gestured to the photograph. Whatever happened between him and Eleanor, it clearly mattered enough for him to keep these things. He cared, Elliot, whether he showed it or not. Elliot sighed, leaning back in the chair. He wanted to dismiss the possibility, to hold on to the certainty of the life he had known. But the evidence was undeniable. Nathaniel Walcott had been connected to Eleanor Harper and, by extension, to him in ways that demanded answers. A sharp knock at the door interrupted their thoughts. Richard Barnes stepped into the room, his expression as calm and composed as ever. His gaze flickered briefly to the photograph in Elliot's hand before settling on his face. "I see you've been exploring," Barnes said, his tone neutral. "You knew," Elliot said, his voice steady but accusatory. "You knew about this, about my connection to Nathaniel." Barnes inclined his head slightly. "I had my suspicions. Mr. Walcott was a private man, but he left enough breadcrumbs for me to piece together certain aspects of his life. I wasn't sure how much you knew." "Nothing," Elliot replied bitterly. "I knew nothing." Barnes's expression softened, a rare glimpse of sympathy breaking through his professional demeanor. "I understand this must be overwhelming, but I believe Mr. Walcott wanted you to uncover this at your own pace. That's why he left the tasks, to guide you." Elliot shook his head, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "This isn't guidance, it's manipulation. He could have told me the truth while he was alive." "Perhaps," Barnes said gently, "but Nathaniel was a man who carried his regrets quietly. He may not have known how to bridge the gap while he had the chance." Clara spoke up, her tone measured. "We found a photograph in the attic, along with letters. There's more to uncover, isn't there?" Barnes nodded. "There is. The East Wing is only the beginning. Mr. Walcott believed the truth should be uncovered step by step, allowing you to process it fully." Elliot exhaled slowly, the enormity of the situation pressing down on him. He wanted to walk away, to return to the quiet life he had built for himself. But a part of him, a small, stubborn part, needed to know the truth. "What's next?" he asked finally. Barnes regarded him with a measured gaze. There's a journal in the library, one that Mr. Walcott kept specifically for this purpose. It contains entries that may provide clarity about his relationship with Eleanor and with you. Elliot glanced at Clara, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. Together, they made their way to the library, Barnes trailing a few steps behind. The room was warm and inviting, its shelves lined with books that seemed to stretch endlessly. Barnes directed them to a locked cabinet, producing a key from his pocket. "This belonged to Mr. Walcott," Barnes said, as he unlocked the cabinet. "He instructed me to provide it to you when the time was right." Inside was a single leather-bound journal, its cover worn and its pages yellowed with age. Elliot took it carefully, his fingers trembling as he opened it to the first entry. Nathaniel's handwriting was precise, his words deliberate. "I have carried this secret for decades, unsure of how to share it, or even if I should. Eleanor and I made choices that altered the course of our lives and of others. Now, as I near the end, I can no longer carry this burden alone. To Elliot, I leave the truth, and I hope he can forgive me for the ways I failed him." Elliot closed the journal, his heart heavy. "He knew," he said quietly, "he knew he had a responsibility to me." Barnes placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. "Whatever regrets Nathaniel had, I believe he wanted to make things right in the only way he knew how." Clara touched Elliot's arm. "We'll figure this out, together." Elliot nodded, the determination in her voice giving him strength. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he was no longer afraid to follow it. The journal rested heavily in Elliot Harper's hands as he sat in the library's overstuffed armchair. Clara perched on the edge of the seat across from him, her curiosity palpable as she watched him. The air in the room felt charged, as if the secrets contained in Nathaniel Walcott's words were waiting to leap off the pages and into the light. Elliot turned the first few pages slowly, the crisp rustle breaking the silence. Nathaniel's entries were deliberate and confessional, filled with observations of his life, regrets, and cryptic hints at a decision that had weighed on him for decades. Elliot read aloud, "Eleanor was the only light in those years. I was a man consumed by ambition, by the need to secure a legacy that would outlast me. I thought I was protecting her by letting her go, but I see now it was cowardice. The choices we made were supposed to shield others from pain, but instead they left wounds no one could heal. And Elliot's voice faltered, the weight of the words settling in. Clara leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What do you think he means by that?" He shook his head, swallowing the lump in his throat. It's clear he felt guilt about whatever happened with Eleanor. "But why mention me by name?" Clara hesitated, then said softly, "Maybe it's time we stopped guessing and started asking the right questions. The journal isn't just a confession, it's a map." Elliot nodded, flipping to the next entry. The handwriting became more erratic, as if Nathaniel's emotions had begun to spill over. "The East Wing was a sanctuary for us once, but it became a prison for my memories. The chest holds pieces of what we lost, but the truth lies deeper. Elliot must find the room where we said goodbye. It will tell him everything." Elliot sat back, his pulse quickening. "The room where they said goodbye? What does that mean?" Clara's eyes lit up with understanding. "It has to be somewhere in this house. If the East Wing was important to them, maybe there's another place connected to their story." The library door creaked open, and Richard Barnes stepped inside, his measured footsteps echoing against the polished wood floor. He glanced at the journal in Elliot's hands, his expression grave. "I see you've begun," Barnes said, his voice low. "Did you find the entry about the goodbye?" Elliot's gaze narrowed. "You knew about it?" "I knew there was a room Nathaniel considered significant. Barnes admitted. He mentioned it to me in passing, though he never described its location. Clara stood, her determination evident. Then we'll have to find it ourselves. There's more to this story, and it's not going to reveal itself. Barnes nodded. If I may offer a suggestion, there's an older set of blueprints for the manor in the study. They might help. Elliot rose from his chair, the journal still clutched in his hand. Then let's start there. The trio made their way to the study, a room filled with architectural plans, documents, and other artifacts of the Walcott family's legacy. Barnes retrieved the blueprints, spreading them across the massive desk. The faded parchment depicted the sprawling estate in intricate detail, complete with labeled rooms and hidden passageways. Here, Clara said, pointing to a small, unlabeled section near the east wing. This part doesn't seem to connect to anything else. Barnes adjusted his glasses, studying the blueprint. That's odd. It looks like a room, but there's no door marked. Elliot traced the lines with his finger. Could it be sealed off? It's possible, Barnes replied. Nathaniel had a tendency to compartmentalize, both literally and figuratively. Determined, Elliot and Clara returned to the east wing, armed with a flashlight and the map's guidance. They retraced their steps, searching for inconsistencies in the layout. The faded wallpaper and creaking floorboards seemed to whisper secrets as they passed. Finally, Clara stopped in front of a wall that seemed too solid for its surroundings. She tapped it lightly, the hollow sound confirming her suspicion. "This is it," she said. "There's something behind here." Elliot inspected the wall, running his hands along the edges. His fingers caught on a small, almost imperceptible latch hidden within the molding. With a gentle tug, the panel slid open, revealing a narrow doorway. The room beyond was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of time and abandonment. Inside, a single piece of furniture dominated the space, a simple wooden bench worn smooth by use. On the wall above it hung a faded painting of a garden, its colors muted by years of neglect. Elliot stepped inside, his chest tightening as a wave of emotion washed over him. He could feel the significance of the place, the echoes of conversations long past lingering in the air. Clara followed, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "What do you think happened here?" she asked. Elliot didn't answer immediately. He walked to the bench, lowering himself onto it as though drawn by an unseen force. The journal entry replayed in his mind. "The room where we said goodbye. It feels like a farewell," he said finally, "like this is where they made a decision they couldn't take back." Clara knelt beside him, her expression pensive. If this was where it all ended, maybe it's also where it began. "There's something here we're meant to find." Elliot glanced around the room, his eyes scanning every detail. On the back of the bench, carved into the wood, were two initials, E and N, intertwined within the outline of a heart. He traced the carving with his fingers, his heart heavy. "Eleanor and Nathaniel," he said softly. "This place was theirs." Clara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was, and now it's yours to understand." Elliot sat in the stillness, the weight of the room's history settling over him. The truth was close now. He could feel it, but he knew there was still more to uncover, and he wasn't sure he was ready for what lay ahead. The carved initials on the bench felt like a pulse beneath Elliot's fingertips, an echo of the lives entwined here long before his own. The dim light of the secret room, filtered through dust-speckled air, added to the gravity of the moment. Clara stood silently beside him, her presence a quiet support as Elliot processed what this room meant, not just to Nathaniel and Eleanor, but to the unfolding story of his own life. After a long silence, Clara broke the stillness. "What do we do now?" Elliot exhaled slowly, his voice steady but heavy. "We keep looking." If this is where their story ended, there has to be more somewhere else that explains why. Clara nodded, her resolve mirroring his. Do you think Barnes knows about this room? Elliot shook his head. If he did, he didn't let on. But I think Nathaniel left it for us to find, not for anyone else. Clara ran her fingers along the edges of the painting above the bench. This seems out of place, she said, her tone thoughtful. It doesn't match the style of anything else in the house. Elliot stood and joined her, studying the faded artwork. It depicted a lush garden, its details painstakingly rendered. A stone path winding through rose bushes, a small fountain at the center, and in the distance, a gate barely visible behind a curtain of ivy. Something about it felt familiar, though Elliot couldn't place it. Clara gently tilted the frame forward. There's something behind it, she said, her voice tinged with excitement. Elliot helped her lift the painting from the wall, revealing a small, built-in compartment. Inside was a folded letter, its edges yellowed with age. Clara handed it to Elliot, her expression eager and anxious. With trembling hands, Elliot unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakably Nathaniel's, and as he began to read, his voice softened with emotion. My dearest Eleanor, we have always known our love was impossible, yet it has defined my life in ways I can never put into words. This room, our sanctuary, will remain as it is, a testament to what we shared, and to the decisions we made to protect the ones we loved. To Elliot, should he ever find this, you are the best of us. You are the legacy I never dared to claim but always cherished in my heart. I hope you can forgive the choices that brought you here and find peace in knowing that you were always loved. Elliot's voice broke as he reached the final words. His hands trembled, the letter slipping from his grasp onto the bench. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, as the weight of Nathaniel's confession settled over him. Clara placed a hand on his arm, her voice gentle. Elliot, are you okay? He shook his head, unable to form a coherent answer. The truth he had been seeking was now undeniable. Nathaniel Walcott had been his father. The man who had left him nothing but questions for most of his life had carried this secret, hiding it in the walls of his home, in the folds of his memories. I don't know how to feel, Elliot admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Angry? Sad? Relieved? Clara sat beside him, her tone steady. It's okay to feel all of it. You've just uncovered something huge, something that changes everything. Elliot nodded, though the maelstrom of emotions inside him refused to settle. He picked up the letter again, reading Nathaniel's words over and over, as if searching for some hidden meaning. What about Eleanor? Clara asked quietly. Do you think she wanted you to know? Elliot looked at the letter, his chest tightening. Maybe she did, or maybe she thought it was better this way. I don't know. I wish I could have asked her. Clara placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. We can't change the past, but maybe understanding it can help you move forward. They left the room in silence, carefully replacing the painting and locking the door behind them. Elliot carried the letter and the photograph from the chest as they returned to the library. There, Richard Barnes waited, his expression calm but questioning. You've found something, Barnes said, more a statement than a question. Elliot placed the letter on the desk, his movements deliberate. I found the truth. Barnes read the letter silently, his expression softening as he reached the end. Nathaniel loved you, Mr. Harper. He may not have shown it in the ways you would have wanted, but it's clear he cared deeply. Elliot leaned against the desk, his voice heavy with emotion. Then why didn't he tell me? Why hide it all these years? Barnes's reply was measured. Nathaniel was a man burdened by his own flaws. He likely believed he was sparing you from complications, or perhaps sparing himself from rejection. But by bringing you here, he hoped to make amends. Clara stepped forward, her voice firm. What happens now? Barnes regarded them both thoughtfully. Now, Mr. Harper must decide how to proceed. Nathaniel left you more than just an inheritance. He left you a story, one that only you can finish. Elliot looked at the letter again, his mind racing. He felt raw, exposed, and unmoored. But beneath the turmoil was a growing resolve. This journey was far from over, but he was determined to see it through, no matter where it led. The next morning, Elliot Harper awoke to the first rays of sunlight streaming through the tall windows of his room. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt as ominous as it had when he first arrived. Instead, Walcott Manor seemed to hum with a subtle energy, as if it had been waiting for him to uncover its secrets. He sat on the edge of the bed, Nathaniel's letter resting on the nightstand beside him. The words echoed in his mind. "You are the legacy I never dared to claim, but always cherished in my heart." They were at once comforting and infuriating, a blend of love and regret that mirrored the complicated emotions now stirring within him. Dressing quickly, he made his way downstairs. The smell of fresh coffee wafted through the hallways, leading him to the dining room. Clara was already there, nursing a steaming mug and leafing through a book she had pulled from the Manor's library. "Morning," she said, offering him a small smile as he entered. "Morning," Elliot replied, pouring himself a cup and taking a seat across from her. The two sat in companionable silence for a few minutes before Clara spoke again. "So, what's the plan?" she asked, closing the book and leaning forward. Elliot sighed, cradling his mug. "I need to figure out what to do with this truth. Knowing Nathaniel was my father changes everything, but I don't know what to do with that knowledge." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "It's a lot to process. But maybe the next step isn't about what to do with the truth. It's about understanding it better." Elliot looked at her, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Well," Clara said, "Nathaniel left us clues for a reason. Maybe there's more he wanted you to know. About him, about Eleanor, about why he made the choices he did. If we can piece it together, it might help you figure out what this all means for you." Elliot considered her words. The idea of uncovering more of Nathaniel's story was daunting, but it also felt necessary. He couldn't stop now, not when the answers seemed so close. "What do you suggest?" he asked. Clara smiled. "I think we start with the library. Nathaniel kept journals, letters, and who knows what else. There's bound to be something in there that can shed light on his life. And Eleanor's." Elliot nodded, a sense of purpose settling over him. "Let's do it." The library was a treasure trove of history, its shelves packed with books, journals, and records that spanned generations of the Walcott family. Clara climbed a ladder to reach the upper shelves while Elliot focused on the lower ones, pulling out anything that seemed remotely relevant. "Look at this," Clara called, holding up a leather-bound volume with the initials N.W. embossed on the cover. Elliot joined her at the reading table, where she opened the journal to reveal pages filled with Nathaniel's neat handwriting. The entries chronicled his early years, his rise in the business world, and his relationship with the Walcott family. But it was a passage midway through that caught their attention. "Eleanor was my solace in a world that demanded so much. She reminded me of the beauty in simplicity, the joy in things money could never buy. When she told me about the child, I felt both fear and hope, fear of what the world would say, and hope that perhaps, for once, I could have something truly mine." Elliot read the words in silence, his heart heavy. Nathaniel's fear of societal judgment had kept him from claiming his son, but his hope, however fleeting, had clearly stayed with him. "He was afraid," Clara said softly. "Afraid of what people would think, what his family would do." Elliot nodded. But he still wanted to be part of my life, even if he didn't know how. Clara flipped to another entry, written years later. I watched from afar as Elliot grew. His mother shielded him from the worst of life's hardships, and I am grateful for her strength. But I wonder if he'll ever forgive me for my absence, for the choices I made that left us strangers. The words cut deep. Elliot closed the journal, his emotions swirling. He watched me grow up, he said, his voice tight. He knew about me all along. Clara reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his. He cared, Elliot. Maybe not in the way you would have wanted, but he cared. Elliot took a deep breath, grounding himself. I need to know more about Eleanor, about him, about everything. Clara nodded, a glint of determination in her eyes. Then let's keep going. Hours passed as they combed through the library's contents, uncovering pieces of Nathaniel's life and his connection to Eleanor. They found letters, photographs, and even a business ledger that revealed financial support sent to Eleanor over the years. Each discovery painted a fuller picture of a man torn between duty and love, a man who had made sacrifices he would carry for the rest of his life. By late afternoon, Elliot leaned back in his chair, exhausted but resolute. He tried, he said, more to himself than to Clara. He tried to do what he thought was right. Clara offered him a small, encouraging smile. And now you get to decide what's right for you. Elliot nodded, a sense of clarity beginning to take shape. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he was closer than ever to understanding the man who had left him this tangled legacy. And for the first time since arriving at Walcott Manor, he felt a flicker of peace. Elliot Harper stood by the window of the library, staring out at the sprawling grounds of Walcott Manor. The late afternoon light bathed the garden in a golden hue, but his mind was far from serene. The revelations from Nathaniel's journals and letters had left him reeling, and despite the hours of combing through the past, he still felt as though he were grasping at shadows. Behind him, Clara sifted through another stack of documents, her movements methodical. Her presence had become a source of steady support, her calm demeanor balancing the storm brewing within Elliot. This ledger, Clara said, breaking the silence. It's strange. Elliot turned, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? She held up a leather-bound book filled with columns of numbers and names. It's not just payments to Eleanor. There are entries for someone named Margaret Harper, your mother, right? Elliot crossed the room, taking the ledger from her. His eyes scanned the pages, his pulse quickening as he found the entries Clara mentioned. Each line was dated, the amounts varying but consistent over several years. The notation beside each payment read simply, "For care and stability." My mother never mentioned anything like this, Elliot murmured. We weren't wealthy, but we got by. I always thought it was because she worked so hard. Clara leaned forward, her voice thoughtful. Maybe she didn't want you to know. Maybe she thought it would complicate things. Elliot sat down, his hands tightening around the ledger. The idea that Nathaniel had supported not just Eleanor, but his mother as well, added another layer of complexity to the story. Had she known the truth about him all along? And if so, why had she kept it hidden? I need answers, Elliot said, his voice firm. If my mother knew about Nathaniel, then she was part of this too. There's something we're still missing. Clara nodded, her gaze steady. Then we keep looking. As the evening deepened, the library grew dim, its shadows stretching across the walls. Elliot and Clara worked tirelessly, uncovering more fragments of Nathaniel's life. Among the discoveries was a small box hidden in the back of a desk drawer, its contents wrapped in delicate tissue paper. Inside were photographs, black and white images of Eleanor, Margaret, and a baby Elliot, their smiles frozen in time. Elliot stared at the photographs, his emotions raw. He was there, he said softly. He was part of our lives, even if it was in the background. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. It sounds like he wanted to be more, but something always held him back. Elliot nodded, though his heart ached with the weight of what could have been. I keep asking myself why he didn't step forward, why he didn't claim me as his son. Was he ashamed of me, or of himself? Clara hesitated, then said gently, "Maybe it wasn't about shame. Maybe it was fear. Fear of what his family would think, or fear of disrupting your life." Elliot exhaled deeply, the pain in his chest mingling with a growing understanding. Nathaniel's decisions had been flawed, but they had also been driven by love, a love complicated by circumstances and choices that spanned decades. Later that night, as Clara went to her room to rest, Elliot remained in the library, his thoughts too restless to allow for sleep. He pored over the letters and journals again, searching for something, anything, that would provide clarity. One entry in Nathaniel's journal caught his attention. The words were scrawled hastily, the ink darker and more forceful than usual. I wanted to be there for him, to teach him, to watch him grow, to share the things I never dared to share with anyone else. But my silence became a prison, one I didn't know how to escape. Eleanor always said he would understand one day. I can only hope she was right. Elliot closed the journal, his hands trembling. He had spent so much of his life searching for connection, for a sense of belonging that always seemed just out of reach. Now, he realized, that longing had been mirrored in Nathaniel. They were two men, separated by silence and choices, but bound by something far deeper. As the clock in the hall struck midnight, Elliot felt a shift within himself. The anger and confusion that had clouded his mind began to lift, replaced by a quiet resolve. He couldn't change the past, but he could honor it, by understanding it, by forgiving it, and by finding a way to move forward. The following morning, Elliot shared his thoughts with Clara over breakfast. "I've spent my life avoiding questions because I was afraid of the answers," he admitted. "But now I see that the answers are the only way to find peace." Clara smiled warmly. "And you've already started finding them, but there's still more to uncover. Nathaniel's story doesn't end here." Elliot nodded, a spark of determination in his eyes. "Then we keep going." The air in Walcott Manor seemed heavier as Elliot Harper entered the East Wing once again. The discoveries of the past days had drawn him deeper into Nathaniel's world, and though he felt closer to the truth, each revelation left him grappling with new questions. Clara walked beside him, her footsteps light against the creaking floorboards. Her presence was a steadying force as they approached the locked study where Nathaniel had spent much of his later years. Richard Barnes was waiting for them. He had offered to assist with accessing the final set of records Nathaniel had left behind, stored in a safe that required both a code and the key Elliot carried. Barnes greeted them with his usual calm professionalism, though there was a hint of unease in his eyes. "Are you ready?" Barnes asked, looking directly at Elliot. Elliot hesitated but nodded. "Let's get this over with." The safe was built into the wall behind a heavy oak bookshelf. Barnes moved the shelf aside, revealing the steel door and a keypad. He entered the code Nathaniel had entrusted to him, and Elliot inserted the key, turning it with a sharp click. The door swung open to reveal a collection of documents, a stack of letters, and a small, leather-bound book. Barnes handed the book to Elliot. "This is the last journal Nathaniel wrote. He kept it separate from the others." Elliot accepted the journal, its weight far greater than its size. He opened it, his heart pounding as he read the first few entries. They were written in Nathaniel's familiar hand, but the tone was darker, more desperate. "The choices we make often seem clear in the moment, but hindsight is a cruel mirror. I believed I was protecting Eleanor and Elliot, but I see now that my silence only deepened the wounds. This journal is my final attempt to make things right, to leave behind the truth I could never say aloud. Elliot closed the book, his breath shallow. He knew this would be his last chance to explain himself. Clara touched his arm gently. Then we owe it to him and to ourselves to keep going. They moved the documents to the library, spreading them out on the long table. The letters were a mix of correspondence between Nathaniel and Eleanor, financial agreements related to Elliot's upbringing, and drafts of letters Nathaniel had written to Elliot but never sent. Each piece painted a clearer picture of a man consumed by love and regret. One letter caught Clara's attention. It was addressed to Margaret Harper, Elliot's mother, and was written shortly after Eleanor's death. Margaret, I am writing not as the man you once knew, but as someone seeking your forgiveness. I failed Eleanor, and I fear I have failed Elliot as well. You have been his anchor, his protector, and I cannot thank you enough for the life you have given him. I only ask that one day he be allowed to know the truth, not to condemn me, but to understand why I made the choices I did. Elliot stared at the letter, his chest tightening. His mother had known everything. She had carried the weight of Nathaniel's absence, shielding Elliot from the complexities of his origins while quietly honoring Nathaniel's wishes. Why didn't she tell me? Elliot said, his voice strained. Why did she keep this from me? Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe she thought she was protecting you, or maybe she wanted you to live your life without the burden of his mistakes. Elliot nodded slowly, though the ache in his heart remained. His mother had always been a pillar of strength, but now he saw her in a new light, as a woman who had made sacrifices of her own, who had carried secrets out of love. As they continued sorting through the documents, a pattern began to emerge. Nathaniel had meticulously planned every step of his estate, ensuring that Elliot would inherit not only his fortune, but also his story. One document, in particular, stood out, a handwritten timeline of key events in Nathaniel's life, marked with cryptic notations. Elliot pointed to one entry. This date, it's the same year Eleanor died. And this one here, just a few months later, is when my family moved to Chicago. Clara leaned in, her brow furrowed. Do you think he had something to do with that? Barnes, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. It's possible. Nathaniel had a way of orchestrating things from behind the scenes. He might have ensured your family had the means to relocate, perhaps as a way to give you a fresh start. Elliot sat back, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to align. Nathaniel's influence had been present throughout his life, even when he hadn't known it. The man who had seemed so distant had, in his own flawed way, been a constant force. As night fell, Elliot and Clara stepped outside to clear their minds. The cool breeze carried the scent of the garden, and the stars above seemed brighter than usual. They walked in silence for a while before Clara spoke. You've come so far, Elliot, she said. You've uncovered things most people would never have the courage to face. Elliot looked at her, his expression weary but resolute. I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my anchor through all of this. Clara smiled softly. You're stronger than you think, and Nathaniel saw that in you, even if he couldn't say it. Elliot gazed up at the stars, the weight of the day settling over him. He still had questions, still felt the ache of years spent in the dark. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of clarity, a sense that perhaps he could find peace in the truth he had fought so hard to uncover. The following morning, Elliot Harper rose early, the weight of Nathaniel's revelations still pressing heavily on his mind. The documents and letters they had uncovered left no room for doubt. Nathaniel had been both a benefactor and an absent father, weaving himself into Elliot's life from afar while leaving behind a legacy of secrecy and regret. But the path forward remained unclear, and Elliot was determined to uncover every remaining piece of the puzzle. As he descended the grand staircase, the house was quiet, bathed in the soft light of dawn. He found Clara already in the library, sipping coffee and poring over a set of letters they hadn't yet reviewed. She looked up as he entered, her expression both tired and resolute. "Couldn't sleep?" Elliot asked, his voice low. Clara shook her head. "Not with everything we've uncovered. There's so much to process, and I can't shake the feeling that there's still more to find." Elliot poured himself a cup of coffee and joined her at the table. The scattered documents were like fragments of a mosaic, each revealing a small piece of Nathaniel's life and the choices that had shaped them both. "What are you looking at?" Elliot asked. Clara slid a letter toward him. "This one's from a few months before Eleanor's death. Nathaniel wrote about a promise he made to her, but he doesn't say what it was. I think it's important." Elliot picked up the letter, scanning the familiar handwriting. Nathaniel's words were tinged with sorrow. "Eleanor made me promise to ensure Elliot would always have the stability she feared she couldn't provide. It was the only way she would agree to let me remain in the shadows. I hated myself for it, but I understood her fears. The world was not kind to women like her, and I was too much of a coward to challenge it." Elliot set the letter down, his jaw tightening. "He promised her he'd take care of me, but only if he stayed out of my life." Clara nodded, her voice gentle. "It sounds like they both thought they were doing what was best for you, even if it meant sacrificing their own happiness." Elliot leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "I don't know whether to hate him for his cowardice or thank him for his intentions." Clara gave him a sympathetic smile. "Maybe you don't have to choose. People are complicated, and their choices rarely fit into neat categories." Elliot considered her words, the knot in his chest loosening slightly. "You're right, but I still feel like there's something we're missing, something that ties all of this together." The day unfolded in a blur of searching and piecing together fragments of Nathaniel's story. As they worked, a sense of urgency grew within Elliot, a need to understand not just Nathaniel's actions, but the reasons behind them. By late afternoon, they had returned to the East Wing, searching for clues in the study where they had found Nathaniel's final journal. It was Clara who discovered the hidden compartment. She had been inspecting the desk, running her fingers along its edges, when she noticed a slight irregularity in the wood grain. With a gentle push, a small drawer slid open, revealing a single envelope sealed with wax. "Elliot," she called, her voice trembling slightly. "You should see this." Elliot crossed the room, his heart pounding as he took the envelope. The wax seal bore Nathaniel's initials, and the paper felt old and fragile in his hands. Carefully, he broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Elliot, if you are reading this, then you have uncovered the truth I spent my life hiding. I do not ask for your forgiveness, as I know my choices have caused you pain, even if you were unaware of it. Instead, I ask only for your understanding. I loved Eleanor and I loved you, but I allowed fear to dictate my actions. The world I inhabited was one of power and judgment, a world that would not have been kind to either of you. This house holds more than just memories. It holds the legacy I wish to leave behind. You are its rightful heir, not because of the wealth it contains, but because of the love that built it. I hope you will find it in your heart to embrace that legacy, to honor the family we were, and to create something better from it." Elliot's hands shook as he finished reading. He looked at Clara, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and resolve. "He wanted me to have more than just the truth. He wanted me to have a future." Clara placed a hand on his arm, her voice steady. "And you can, Elliot. You've come this far. Don't stop now." As evening fell, Elliot stood in the garden, the letter from Nathaniel still in his pocket. The air was cool, the scent of roses wafting on the breeze. He felt the weight of the journey he had undertaken, but also a strange lightness, as though he were beginning to let go of the anger and confusion that had plagued him. Clara joined him, her presence a quiet comfort. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about what he said," Elliot replied, "about embracing the legacy. I don't know what that means yet, but I think I'm ready to find out." Clara smiled. "That sounds like a good place to start." Elliot nodded, the resolve in his chest growing stronger. Nathaniel had left him a complicated inheritance, not just of wealth, but of love, regret, and hope. It was up to him to decide how to carry it forward, and for the first time, he felt ready to take the next step. Elliot Harper spent the next morning wandering the grounds of Walcott Manor, the crisp air carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant pine. The estate seemed endless, its manicured gardens and sprawling meadows a stark contrast to the tightly controlled world of his own modest upbringing. He couldn't shake the feeling that this place, with all its grandeur and secrecy, held the final pieces of the puzzle Nathaniel had left for him. Clara joined him near the ivy-covered gazebo in the west garden. She carried a notebook and a bundle of letters they had collected, her expression thoughtful as she approached. "I thought we could use some fresh air while we go through these," she said, holding up the stack of papers. Elliot gave her a faint smile. "A good idea. This place feels less suffocating out here." They settled into the gazebo, the sound of rustling leaves providing a soft backdrop as they began to sort through the documents. The sun filtered through the ivy, casting dappled light over the pages as they read in silence. One letter caught Clara's attention. "Look at this," she said, handing it to Elliot. "It's from Eleanor to Nathaniel." Elliot scanned the letter, his pulse quickening as he read the words. "My dear Nathaniel, I fear for what will happen after I'm gone. Margaret has been strong for Elliot, but I worry she will bear the burden of this secret alone. You must promise me, if the time comes, that you will guide him. He deserves to know who he is, not just your son, but someone capable of carrying the best of both of us." Elliot's chest tightened as he set the letter down. "She wanted me to know the truth all along," he murmured. "She trusted him to tell me." Clara leaned forward, her expression empathetic. "And he's finally done it, in his own way. He left you this trail to follow because he couldn't face you directly. Maybe this is how he thought he could keep his promise." Elliot exhaled slowly, the ache in his chest easing slightly. "He tried, didn't he? Even if he made mistakes, he tried to do right by us." Clara nodded. "And now it's your turn to decide what to do with what he left you." Later that day, they returned to the library to examine the last of Nathaniel's journals and letters. Among the documents, Clara found a map of the estate, marked with notes in Nathaniel's handwriting. Several locations were circled, including a spot labeled The Gate. "What do you think this means?" Clara asked, showing Elliot the map. He studied it carefully, his brow furrowing. "It's near the edge of the property, past the woods. I've never seen it before." Clara tapped the map. "If Nathaniel marked it, it must be important. Should we go?" Elliot hesitated, then nodded. "Let's find out what he wanted us to see." The walk to the gate was longer than they had anticipated, the path winding through dense woods that grew darker as the afternoon light began to wane. Clara carried a flashlight, just in case, while Elliot kept the map in hand, guiding them through the twists and turns. After nearly an hour, they emerged into a small clearing. At its center stood a wrought-iron gate, its black paint flaking with age. Behind it was a stone pathway leading to a structure partially hidden by overgrown ivy and moss. "What is this place?" Clara whispered, her voice barely carrying over the sound of the wind rustling the trees. Elliot approached the gate, pushing it open with a creak. The path led them to a small, weathered chapel, its stained glass windows clouded with time. The air was cool and still, a faint scent of earth and stone lingering in the space. Inside the chapel, they found a single wooden pew and an altar covered in dust. On the altar was a leather-bound book, smaller than Nathaniel's journals but clearly well-worn. Elliot picked it up carefully, the leather cool under his fingers. As he opened it, a folded piece of paper fell out. He bent down to retrieve it, his heart pounding as he unfolded the page. The handwriting was unmistakably Nathaniel's. Elliot, this chapel was where Eleanor and I found peace in a world that refused to accept us. It is where we made our promises, and where I leave you this final truth. The love we shared was not perfect, but it was real. And it lives on in you. Carry it forward, not as a burden, but as a beacon. Elliot closed his eyes, his breath hitching. He could feel the weight of Nathaniel's words, the love and regret that had shaped his life without his knowledge. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. "What does it say?" He handed her the letter, unable to speak. As she read it, tears filled her eyes. "This place, it meant everything to them," she said softly, "and now it's part of your story too." Elliot sat on the pew, the silence of the chapel wrapping around him like a comforting shroud. He had spent so much of his life searching for answers, for meaning, and now, in this small, forgotten chapel, he realized he had found it. "It's not just their story," Elliot said finally, his voice steady. "It's mine too. And I have to decide how to honor it." Clara smiled, her own emotions shining through. "You will, Elliot. I know you will." As they left the chapel, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in a soft, golden glow. The path ahead was uncertain, but Elliot felt a sense of clarity he hadn't known in years. Nathaniel's legacy was no longer a mystery. It was a gift, one he was finally ready to embrace. Elliot Harper stood in the drawing room of Walcott Manor, the letter from Nathaniel still tucked securely in his pocket. The house, once an oppressive maze of secrets, now felt like a monument to the choices and sacrifices of the people who had lived there. He had uncovered so much about Nathaniel and Eleanor, but now came the most daunting challenge of all, confronting the Walcott family with the truth. The family had gathered at Barnes's request. Evelyn sat stiffly in one of the grand armchairs, her expression icy as she sipped tea. Andrew leaned against the fireplace, arms crossed, his disapproval radiating from him in waves. Clara stood beside Elliot, a quiet pillar of support, while Richard Barnes presided over the meeting with his usual calm professionalism. Barnes cleared his throat, drawing the room's attention. "Thank you all for coming. I've asked you here because Mr. Harper has uncovered significant information that pertains to Mr. Walcott's final wishes." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "Another revelation. How predictable." "Let's get on with it then." Elliot ignored her tone, stepping forward. His voice was steady, but each word felt weighted with the importance of what he was about to share. "I've spent the last several days piecing together the story Nathaniel left behind. It's not just about his wealth or his business, it's about his life and mine." Andrew frowned, his posture tightening. "What are you talking about?" Elliot took a deep breath. "Nathaniel Walcott was my father." The room fell silent, the words hanging heavily in the air. Evelyn's teacup clattered against its saucer as she set it down with more force than necessary. "That's absurd." "It's the truth," Elliot said firmly. "I found the letters, the journals, the records. Nathaniel and Eleanor Harper were in love, but they couldn't be together. When I was born, Nathaniel made a promise to Eleanor to protect me, even if it meant staying out of my life." Andrew let out a bitter laugh. "So, You're claiming you're some secret heir now? That Nathaniel just decided to hand everything over to a stranger? I'm not claiming anything, Elliot replied, his tone calm but resolute. Nathaniel's will speaks for itself. He wanted me to know who I was and to understand the choices he made. This isn't about money. It's about the truth. Evelyn stood, her anger barely contained. The truth is that Nathaniel was a manipulative man who enjoyed playing games with people's lives. And now, even in death, he's still stirring up chaos. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady but sharp. You may see it that way, Evelyn, but Nathaniel's actions were more than just games. He made mistakes, but he also tried to make amends. Elliot deserves to know his story, whether you like it or not. Evelyn glared at Clara but said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. Barnes interjected, his voice measured. Nathaniel's intent was clear. He wanted Mr. Harper to inherit not just his estate, but his legacy. The documents Elliot has uncovered validate his connection to Mr. Walcott, and as executor of the will, I can confirm their authenticity. Andrew threw up his hands. So that's it. We're just supposed to accept this. Yes, Barnes said simply. That is what Nathaniel intended. Elliot stepped closer to the center of the room, his gaze steady as he looked at each of them. I didn't come here to take anything from you. I came here because I needed to understand who Nathaniel was and what he meant to my family. I found those answers, and now I need to decide what to do with them. Evelyn crossed her arms, her voice cold. And what do you plan to do, Mr. Harper? Enlighten us. Elliot hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He thought of Nathaniel's final letter, of the chapel where he had left his love and regrets etched into stone. He thought of his mother's quiet strength and Eleanor's faith in him. They had all shaped his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. I'm going to honor his legacy, Elliot said finally. Not by hoarding his wealth or clinging to his mistakes, but by using what he left behind to create something better. Nathaniel wanted this place, this family, to stand for more than just its name. I think it's time we made that happen. Clara smiled softly, her eyes shining with pride. Barnes nodded, his approval evident. Even Evelyn's icy demeanor seemed to thaw slightly, though her expression remained guarded. Andrew looked away, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. Elliot felt a sense of calm wash over him. The journey that had begun with a single, mysterious letter had brought him here. Not just to the truth about Nathaniel, but to a truth about himself. He was no longer the man defined by loss and uncertainty. He was someone who could carry the weight of his history and turn it into something meaningful. Thank you for listening, Elliot said, his voice steady. I know this isn't what any of you expected, but it's the truth. And I hope, in time, you'll see it the way I do, not as an ending, but as a new beginning. With that, he turned and left the room, Clara by his side. The walls of Walcott Manor no longer felt like barriers. They felt like foundations, ready to support the legacy he was determined to build. The days following Elliot's declaration were marked by a quiet transformation within Walcott Manor. The tense undercurrents that had defined the house since his arrival seemed to ease, though the wounds left by Nathaniel's decisions were far from healed. Elliot felt the weight of his choice to embrace Nathaniel's legacy and find a way to honor it, pressing down on him, but it was accompanied by a new sense of purpose. He spent much of his time in the library, piecing together the remaining fragments of Nathaniel's story. Clara joined him whenever she could, her insight and encouragement invaluable as they worked through the documents. Evelyn and Andrew remained distant, their pride and bitterness keeping them apart from the quiet shift taking place within the house. On the fourth evening after his declaration, Elliot found himself sitting alone in the chapel. The faint scent of aged wood and stone filled the air, and the stained glass windows cast muted colors across the pews. He had brought Nathaniel's final letter with him, reading it again in the soft light of the candles he had lit. Elliot, I hope this chapel offers you the same peace it gave Eleanor and me. It was here that I learned the true cost of the choices we make. And it is here that I ask you to forgive mine. I cannot undo the past, but I leave you this place as a symbol of what could have been and of what still can be. Elliot folded the letter carefully, his emotions a mix of sorrow and gratitude. Nathaniel's words felt like a quiet apology, an acknowledgement of the pain he had caused and the love he had struggled to express. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Clara standing in the doorway, her expression soft as she approached. I thought I might find you here, she said, sitting beside him. You've been spending a lot of time in this place. Elliot nodded. It feels honest, like I can hear him here, more clearly than anywhere else. Clara glanced at the letter in his hands. Do you think you can forgive him? Elliot considered her question, his gaze fixed on the flickering candles. I think I already have. He made mistakes, but he also made sacrifices, and in his own way, he tried to make things right. Clara smiled gently. I think he'd be proud of you for finding the strength to face all of this. Elliot met her eyes, a flicker of gratitude passing between them. I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my anchor through all of this. She blushed slightly, looking down at her hands. I didn't do much. This was your journey. It was ours, Elliot corrected. Nathaniel left this for both of us, for me to understand him and for you to find your own place in all of this. Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. I think you're right. For years, I felt like an outsider in this family. But now, I feel like I've found something worth holding on to. The next morning, Evelyn approached Elliot in the library. Her demeanor was reserved but lacked the sharp edge it had carried before. She stood by the doorway for a moment, as though deciding whether to speak, before finally stepping inside. Mr. Harper, she began, her tone formal. May I have a word? Elliot set down the ledger he had been examining and gestured for her to sit. Of course. Evelyn hesitated before taking the seat across from him. Her gaze was steady, but tinged with something that might have been regret. I owe you an apology, she said finally. I've been unkind. And while I still struggle to accept everything you've told us, I can see that you're not here to cause harm. Elliot studied her, surprised by the admission. Thank you, Evelyn. I know this hasn't been easy. For any of us, she nodded, folding her hands in her lap. Nathaniel was complicated. He was both the best and the worst of us. And while I don't agree with many of his decisions, I can see now that he cared for you in his own way. Elliot felt a small measure of relief at her words. He cared for all of us, I think, even if he didn't always know how to show it. Evelyn's lips quirked into a faint, almost wistful smile. Perhaps, I suppose we all carry our share of flaws. She rose, smoothing her skirt. If there's anything I can do to assist you in whatever comes next, you need only ask. Elliot nodded, gratitude warming his voice. I appreciate that. As Evelyn left, Elliot felt a glimmer of hope that the fractures within the Walcott family might one day begin to heal. That evening, Elliot stood on the balcony of his room, watching the sun set over the estate. The journey that had begun with a single letter had brought him to a place he never could have imagined, a place of understanding, of forgiveness, and of possibility. He still had much to do, much to decide about how to honor Nathaniel's legacy and what role he would play in the future of Walcott Manor. But for the first time, he felt ready to face it, knowing he wasn't alone. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the trees, Elliot smiled to himself. The past was no longer a weight he carried, it was a foundation he could build upon. The first light of dawn crept through the curtains of Elliot Harper's room, stirring him from a restless sleep. The events of the past weeks had begun to settle in his mind, their once raw edges softening into clarity. He stretched, the aches in his body a quiet reminder of the years that had passed since he had last faced such emotional upheaval. Today, however, felt different. It was the day he would begin to act, not just to understand, but to create something meaningful from the truth he had uncovered. As he made his way downstairs, the scent of coffee wafted through the air. Clara was already in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug as she read a newspaper spread out on the table. She looked up as Elliot entered, a smile lighting her face. "Morning," she said, sliding the coffee pot toward him. "You're up early." Elliot poured himself a cup, sitting across from her. "Couldn't sleep, too much on my mind." "Good thoughts, I hope," Clara said, her tone teasing but warm. "Mostly," Elliot admitted. He sipped his coffee, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking about what comes next. Nathaniel left me this legacy, and I need to figure out what to do with it." Clara leaned forward, her expression curious. "Do you have an idea?" Elliot nodded, his voice steady. "I want to honor his memory, but I also want to move forward. I've been thinking about using part of the estate to create something that benefits others, something that reflects the lessons I've learned here." Clara smiled, her eyes bright with approval. "That sounds perfect. What kind of project?" "I'm not sure yet," Elliot admitted, "but I was a teacher for most of my life. Education feels like the right place to start. Maybe a scholarship fund or a program for underserved communities." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like something Nathaniel would have supported, and something Eleanor would have been proud of." Elliot's chest tightened at the mention of Eleanor, but it was no longer the sharp pain of loss. It was a quieter ache, one that carried the weight of love and gratitude. "I think so too," he said softly. Later that morning, Elliot met with Richard Barnes in the study. The lawyer's calm demeanor had become a steady presence over the past weeks, and Elliot felt a growing respect for the man's quiet dedication to fulfilling Nathaniel's wishes. "Mr. Harper," Barnes began, gesturing for Elliot to sit, "how can I assist you today?" Elliot leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk. "I want to discuss the future of the estate. Nathaniel's legacy isn't just about wealth, it's about the lives he touched. I want to use part of his fortune to create something meaningful, something that helps others." Barnes's expression softened, a rare glimmer of warmth in his otherwise professional demeanor. "That is a noble goal, Mr. Harper. Do you have a specific plan in mind?" "Not yet," Elliot admitted. "But I'd like to start with a foundation, something focused on education and opportunity. I want to give people the chance to build better lives, the way Nathaniel helped give me and my family that chance." Barnes nodded, his approval evident. "I can help you establish the necessary structures. We'll need to draft the legal framework, identify potential partners, and determine how the funds will be allocated." Elliot smiled faintly. "It sounds complicated." "It is," Barnes agreed, "but it's worth it. And I believe Nathaniel would be pleased to see his legacy used in this way." Elliot felt a sense of relief at the lawyer's words. "Thank you, Barnes. I'll need all the help I can get." By afternoon, the house was abuzz with quiet activity. Clara had taken it upon herself to begin organizing Nathaniel's personal effects, sorting through the belongings that had filled the manor for decades. Evelyn and Andrew, though still distant, had softened slightly in their interactions with Elliot, their hostility tempered by his clear intentions to honor Nathaniel's memory. Elliot found himself in the library once more. This time not as a seeker of secrets, but as a planner of futures. He worked with Barnes to draft the initial outlines of the foundation, their discussions punctuated by moments of quiet reflection. At one point, Clara entered with a stack of letters she had found in the East Wing. "I thought these might be useful," she said, setting them on the desk. "They're letters from Nathaniel to various organizations, charities, schools, even individuals. It looks like he was already doing some of the work you're planning to continue." Elliot picked up one of the letters, scanning its contents. It was addressed to a small community school, offering a donation for their arts program. He felt a swell of emotion at the realization that Nathaniel had been quietly supporting causes close to his heart. "This is exactly what I needed," Elliot said, smiling at Clara. "Thank you." She returned the smile. "It's like he left you a blueprint." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elliot stood on the balcony overlooking the garden. The estate was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, its beauty both humbling and inspiring. He thought of Nathaniel, Eleanor, and the tangled web of choices and sacrifices that had brought him to this moment. For the first time, he felt at peace with the past. It was no longer a burden, but a foundation, a starting point for something greater. As Clara joined him on the balcony, her presence a quiet reassurance, Elliot turned to her with a renewed sense of purpose. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice steady. "Nathaniel left me his story, and now it's my turn to write the next chapter." Clara nodded, her expression filled with quiet pride. "And I can't wait to see what you create." Together, they watched the stars emerge one by one, the promise of a new legacy glimmering in the night sky. The morning light filtered through the windows of Walcott Manor's library, casting long, golden beams across the piles of documents and books that now filled the massive oak table. Elliot Harper leaned over a set of handwritten notes, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose. His resolve from the previous day had solidified into action, and the air buzzed with a quiet energy as plans began to take shape. Clara entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee, placing one beside Elliot with a small smile. "Fuel for the visionary," she teased, sitting across from him. Elliot chuckled, taking a grateful sip. "I'm not sure visionary is the right word. Maybe just an old man trying to make up for lost time." Clara shook her head. "Don't sell yourself short. What you're doing is important. It's more than just honoring Nathaniel. It's creating something meaningful." Elliot's smile grew fonder. Clara's unwavering support had become a cornerstone of his journey, her encouragement giving him strength when doubts crept in. He glanced at the papers spread before him, each detailing an aspect of the foundation he planned to establish. "I've been thinking," Elliot began, setting his mug down. "Nathaniel's legacy was about more than money. It was about the lives he touched, even from the shadows. I want this foundation to reflect that, not just scholarships or donations, but mentorship, opportunities for personal growth, something that can truly change lives." Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You could name it after him, the Walcott Foundation. It would honor his name and tie it to the good you're creating." Elliot considered the idea, his gaze distant. "The Walcott Foundation," he murmured. "Yes, that feels right. A way to acknowledge everything he was and everything he could have been." By mid-morning, Richard Barnes arrived to discuss the logistics. The lawyer's calm, methodical approach provided a welcome balance to Elliot's growing enthusiasm. Together, they worked through the legal framework, drafting the bylaws and determining how the foundation would operate. "You'll need a board of trustees," Barnes explained, his pen moving swiftly across the documents. "People who share your vision and can help guide the foundation's work." Elliot nodded, glancing at Clara. "I think I already know who I want by my side." Clara blinked in surprise. "Me?" "Of course," Elliot said. You've been part of this journey from the beginning. I can't think of anyone better to help shape what comes next." Clara's cheeks flushed, but her smile was radiant. "I'd be honored, Elliot. Truly." Barnes cleared his throat gently. "That's an excellent start. We'll also need to consider community leaders, educators, and perhaps even a few members of the Walcott family." At the mention of the Walcotts, Elliot's expression shifted. He thought of Evelyn and Andrew, their initial hostility now tempered by the changes unfolding in the house. Inviting them to be part of the foundation felt both necessary and fraught. "I'll speak with them," Elliot said finally. "This foundation is about unity, not division. If they're willing to contribute, I'd welcome their involvement." Barnes nodded approvingly. "A wise decision, Mr. Harper." "I'll prepare the invitations." That afternoon, Elliot found Evelyn in the drawing room, seated by the window with a book in her lap. She looked up as he entered, her expression guarded but not unkind. "Evelyn," Elliot began, his tone measured. "May I have a moment?" She set the book aside, gesturing for him to sit. "Of course." Elliot hesitated, then took a seat across from her. "I wanted to speak with you about the foundation I'm starting. It's called the Walcott Foundation, and its mission will be to provide opportunities for education and personal growth, things that Nathaniel believed in, even if he didn't always show it." Evelyn's brow furrowed slightly. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to be part of it," Elliot said simply. "Nathaniel's legacy belongs to all of us, and I think your perspective would add value to what we're trying to create." Evelyn studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "I'll consider it. But understand, Elliot, this isn't an easy transition for me. I spent my life trying to make sense of Nathaniel's choices, and now you've turned everything upside down." Elliot nodded, his voice gentle. "I understand, Evelyn. But I believe this foundation can be a way to move forward, not just for me, but for all of us." Evelyn gave him a small, reluctant smile. "You're more persuasive than I expected, Mr. Harper. I'll think about it." By evening, Elliot felt the first inklings of progress taking root. The foundation was still in its infancy, but the pieces were beginning to come together. As he and Clara walked the grounds, the cool night air brushing against their faces, he felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. "You've done so much in such a short time," Clara said, her voice filled with admiration. "Nathaniel would be proud." Elliot smiled, his gaze fixed on the stars above. "I hope so. But more than that, I hope this is just the beginning of something bigger than any of us." Clara slipped her arm through his, her touch warm and reassuring. "It is, Elliot. I can feel it." Together, they continued walking, the path ahead illuminated by the promise of what they were building, a legacy rooted in truth, love, and the hope for a better future. The Walcott Foundation was beginning to take shape, and the air in Walcott Manor carried a new sense of purpose. Elliot Harper had spent the past week in meetings with Richard Barnes, Clara, and potential trustees, crafting the foundation's mission and structuring its operations. The process was intense, but for the first time in years, Elliot felt truly alive, his days filled with meaningful work. This morning, Elliot sat in the East Wing study, surrounded by documents. Clara entered with a stack of letters she had uncovered in one of Nathaniel's cabinets. "Look at these," she said, placing them on the desk. "They're from people Nathaniel helped over the years, students he supported, families he kept afloat. It's incredible." Elliot picked up one of the letters, scanning the heartfelt words of gratitude. "He really did care," he said softly, "even when he couldn't show it outright." Clara nodded, sitting across from him. "And now you're continuing that legacy." "It's like his story is coming full circle," Elliot set the letter down, his expression thoughtful. It's not just about Nathaniel anymore. It's about building something lasting, something that goes beyond all of us. Clara smiled. And you're doing exactly that. Later that day, Elliot and Clara joined Richard Barnes in the Manor's library for the first formal meeting of the Walcott Foundation's interim board. In addition to Clara and Barnes, Evelyn and Andrew had cautiously accepted Elliot's invitation to participate, their initial reservations tempered by his sincerity and the clarity of his vision. Elliot stood at the head of the table, his hands resting on a stack of papers. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "This foundation is more than just a way to honor Nathaniel. It's a way to create opportunities for people who need them. Education changed my life, and I believe it can change countless others." Evelyn folded her hands, her expression guarded but attentive. "And how do you plan to make that happen?" "We'll start with scholarships," Elliot explained, "focusing on underserved communities, students who wouldn't otherwise have access to higher education. But I want to go further than that. We can fund mentorship programs, vocational training, and community initiatives." Andrew, who had remained quiet until now, leaned forward. "It's ambitious," he said, "but I have to admit, it sounds promising." Elliot met his gaze. "It's more than promising, it's necessary." Barnes cleared his throat, adding his voice to the discussion. "We've identified several potential partnerships with local schools and organizations. With the resources Nathaniel left behind, the foundation will be well positioned to make a significant impact." Clara chimed in, her enthusiasm evident. "And this isn't just about funding, it's about creating a network of support. A system that helps people succeed long-term." Evelyn nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Nathaniel always believed in investing in people, even if he didn't always show it. This feels right." The meeting continued with discussions about logistics, timelines, and outreach strategies. By the time they adjourned, a sense of unity had begun to form among the group, their shared commitment to the foundation bridging the divides that had once separated them. That evening, Elliot and Clara walked through the garden, the stars twinkling above them. The Manor's lights glowed softly in the distance, a beacon of the transformation taking place within its walls. "You were incredible today," Clara said, her tone filled with admiration. "You brought everyone together." Elliot smiled, his steps slow and measured. "It wasn't just me, it's all of us working towards something bigger." Clara nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Do you think Nathaniel would have imagined this? His family working together, building something so meaningful?" Elliot chuckled softly. "Probably not, but I think he'd be proud of all of us." They paused near the gazebo, the cool night air brushing against their skin. Clara looked at Elliot, her expression warm. "You've changed, since you arrived here." Elliot met her gaze, his voice quiet but firm. "So have you." She smiled. "Maybe this place changes people. Or maybe it just gives them the chance to become who they were always meant to be." Elliot considered her words, the truth of them settling in his heart. Walcott Manor had been a place of secrets and pain, but it had also become a place of healing and possibility. And for the first time in his life, Elliot felt like he truly belonged. As they turned back toward the house, the path ahead seemed clearer than ever, a path rooted in truth, forgiveness, and the promise of a brighter future. The crisp morning air was invigorating as Elliot Harper stood on the balcony overlooking the grounds of Walcott Manor. The estate was alive with quiet activity. Groundskeepers trimmed hedges, and staff carried crates of supplies into the main hall. Today marked the launch of the Walcott Foundation's first initiative, a scholarship program for students from underserved communities. It was the culmination of weeks of planning, and Elliot couldn't help but feel both excited and nervous. Clara joined him, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. She handed him one and leaned against the railing, her gaze sweeping across the manicured gardens. "Big day," she said with a smile. Elliot chuckled, sipping his tea. "Feels bigger than I expected. It's one thing to plan something on paper, but seeing it come to life, it's different." "It's wonderful," Clara said. "You've taken something that started with pain and turned it into something beautiful. Nathaniel would be proud." Elliot nodded, her words settling warmly in his chest. "It's not just for him. It's for everyone he couldn't reach, for everyone who needs a chance to make their own path." Clara's smile deepened. "And it's a legacy worth carrying forward." By midday, the manor's grand hall was filled with guests, representatives from local schools, community leaders, and the first cohort of scholarship recipients and their families mingled among the ornate furnishings. The air buzzed with excitement and gratitude, the room a vivid reflection of the foundation's purpose. Elliot stood near the entrance, greeting attendees as they arrived. Clara remained by his side, her presence a steady source of comfort. When Evelyn and Andrew entered, Elliot was surprised to see genuine warmth in their expressions. "Quite the event," Evelyn said, her tone almost teasing as she glanced around the room. "I'll admit, I didn't think you'd pull it off." Elliot smiled. "It's not about me, it's about them," he said, gesturing toward the students and their families. Andrew stepped forward, his handshake firm. "You've done good work, Elliot. Nathaniel would have approved." "Thank you," Elliot replied, the words carrying more weight than he had anticipated. The approval of the Walcott family, tentative as it was, felt like another step toward healing the fractures Nathaniel had left behind. As the event progressed, Elliot took the stage to address the crowd. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward him. He gripped the edges of the podium, his voice steady as he spoke. "Thank you all for being here today," he began. "When I first arrived at Walcott Manor, I had no idea what to expect. What I found was a legacy, one filled with love, regret, and hope. Nathaniel Walcott was a complicated man, but he believed in the power of opportunity, in the ability of education to transform lives. It is that belief that we honor today." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the audience. "This foundation is not just about providing financial support, it's about creating pathways for people to realize their potential, to build futures they may not have thought possible. Today is only the beginning." The room erupted in applause, the sound a wave of affirmation that filled Elliot with a quiet pride. He stepped down from the stage, greeted by warm handshakes and words of encouragement. Clara met him near the edge of the crowd, her eyes shining. "You were perfect," she said. Elliot smiled, his shoulders relaxing. It felt right. As the event wound down, Elliot found himself standing near the grand staircase, watching the guests slowly depart. The students who had received scholarships lingered, their excitement palpable as they spoke of their dreams and aspirations. It reminded Elliot of his own days as a teacher, the quiet satisfaction of seeing potential spark in someone's eyes. Evelyn approached, her expression thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking," she said. "This foundation, it's not just about Nathaniel's legacy, it's about yours too." Elliot looked at her, surprised. "Mine?" She nodded. "You've taken something broken and turned it into something whole. That's not an easy thing to do." Her words stayed with him as the evening drew to a close. For so long, Elliot had seen himself as an outsider, a man defined by the losses and uncertainties of his past. But now he saw something else, a purpose, a legacy, and a chance to create lasting change. As the final guest departed and the manor grew quiet once more, Elliot and Clara stood together in the grand hall, the echoes of the day lingering around them. "You did it," Clara said, her voice soft but filled with pride. "We did it," Elliot corrected, his smile warm. "This is only the beginning." Together, they walked toward the balcony, the stars just beginning to dot the night sky. The future stretched before them, filled with promise and possibility, a legacy not just of Nathaniel's making, but one that Elliot had claimed as his own. The days following the launch of the Walcott Foundation brought a new rhythm to life at Walcott Manor. The halls, once filled with the quiet tension of secrets, now buzzed with activity as the Foundation's first programs began to take shape. Elliot Harper, who had spent much of his life seeking purpose, found himself immersed in work that filled him with a sense of fulfillment he had never known. One morning, as he reviewed applications for the next round of scholarships, Clara entered the study carrying a small box. She set it on the desk in front of him, her expression curious. "I found this in one of the storage closets in the East Wing," she said. "It looked like something you might want to see." Elliot opened the box carefully, revealing a collection of mementos, photographs, letters, and a leather-bound notebook. The photographs were old, their edges frayed, but their images were clear. Nathaniel and Eleanor standing in the garden, their faces alight with unguarded joy. A younger Elliot as a toddler, his tiny hand clutching Eleanor's finger. Elliot's breath caught as he sifted through the items. The notebook, when opened, revealed itself to be a journal Eleanor had kept during the final years of her life. Her handwriting was neat but hurried, the words carrying the weight of her thoughts and emotions. He read aloud, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I often wonder if Elliot will ever understand the choices we made. Nathaniel loved him, though he could never say it in the ways that mattered most. I hope that one day he will find peace, not just in knowing the truth, but in knowing that he was always loved." Clara placed a hand on his arm, her voice soft. "She knew how much you would mean to him, even if he couldn't show it." Elliot nodded, his chest tightening. "I wish I could have known her better. She carried so much for all of us." "You're honoring her now," Clara said, "in everything you're doing with the foundation." Elliot closed the journal gently, the weight of Eleanor's words settling into his heart. "I hope so. She deserves that." That afternoon, Elliot decided to visit the chapel, the place where so many of Nathaniel and Eleanor's shared memories had been preserved. He brought the journal with him, seeking a quiet space to reflect on Eleanor's words and what they meant for his own journey. The chapel was cool and still, the light from its stained glass windows casting soft patterns on the stone floor. Elliot sat in the pew where he had first read Nathaniel's final letter, the journal open in his lap. As he read more of Eleanor's entries, he felt a deep sense of connection to her hopes, her fears, and her unwavering love for both Nathaniel and himself. One passage stood out. "The garden was always our sanctuary, the one place where the rest of the world felt far away. If Elliot ever needs to feel close to us, I hope he'll go there. It's where the best parts of our story were written." Elliot closed the journal, a new sense of purpose forming in his mind. The garden had been a place of solace for Eleanor and Nathaniel, a space where they could be themselves, free from the constraints of their complicated lives. It was time to reclaim that space and share its peace with others. The following morning, Elliot met with Clara and Richard Barnes in the study. He laid out his plan with quiet determination. "I want to restore the garden," he said, "not just as a tribute to Eleanor and Nathaniel, but as a space for reflection and renewal, a place where people can come to find peace." Clara's eyes lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. The garden has so much history. It's the perfect way to honor them." Barnes nodded thoughtfully. "It's a fitting project, Mr. Harper. And with the Foundation's resources, we can make it happen." Elliot smiled, the first flicker of excitement breaking through the solemnity of the moment. "Let's get started." The restoration of the garden became a labor of love for Elliot and Clara. They worked alongside a team of landscapers and historians, carefully preserving the elements that Eleanor and Nathaniel had cherished while adding new features to reflect the foundation's mission. Stone benches were placed along the winding paths, each engraved with a quote from Nathaniel's letters or Eleanor's journal. A fountain was restored at the garden's center, its gentle trickle of water creating a serene atmosphere. The roses, which had once been Eleanor's favorite, were replanted and nurtured until they bloomed in vibrant shades of red and white. As the project neared completion, Elliot felt a quiet pride in what they had created. The garden was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a living, breathing space where the weight of history gave way to hope and possibility. On the day the garden was reopened, Elliot stood by the entrance, watching as visitors began to explore the newly restored space. Families strolled along the paths, children laughed near the fountain, and students sat on the benches, reading or simply enjoying the tranquility. Clara joined him, her smile radiant. "It's perfect," she said. "Eleanor and Nathaniel would have loved this." Elliot nodded, his voice soft. "It feels like they're here, somehow." As they walked through the garden together, Elliot felt a profound sense of peace. The journey that had begun with uncertainty and pain had brought him to this moment, a moment where the past, present, and future converged in a place of beauty and meaning. The Walcott legacy was no longer a burden. It was a beacon, shining brightly in the garden's soft light. The garden restoration had breathed new life into Walcott Manor, and its opening day marked a turning point for everyone connected to the estate. Elliot Harper found himself sitting on one of the engraved benches, watching visitors meander through the paths. The air was filled with the scent of roses and the faint sound of laughter from a group of children exploring the fountain at the center. It was everything he had hoped for, a space that celebrated life, renewal, and the lessons of the past. Clara approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Elliot and sat beside him, her eyes sweeping over the scene. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "You've created something incredible." "We created it," Elliot corrected, his voice warm. "I couldn't have done this without you." Clara smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "It's been an honor, Elliot. Watching this come together has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life." Elliot sipped his tea, his gaze drifting to the fountain. "I keep thinking about Eleanor and Nathaniel," he said, "how this place meant so much to them. I wonder if they ever imagined it would become something like this." Clara's expression grew thoughtful. Maybe they didn't have to imagine it. Maybe they just hoped that someday someone would see the beauty they left behind and carry it forward. Elliot nodded, her words resonating deeply. "I think they'd be happy with what we've done." As the sun began to set, casting the garden in hues of gold and amber, Elliot returned to the chapel. He had brought with him the journal Eleanor had kept, intending to leave it there as a way of honoring her memory. The chapel had become a place of solace for him, a sanctuary where he could reflect on the journey that had brought him here. He placed the journal on the altar, pausing to run his fingers over its worn cover. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper, "for everything." The stillness of the chapel seemed to embrace him, the air filled with a quiet sense of completion. For the first time in years, Elliot felt whole, his questions answered, his purpose clear. When he stepped outside, the evening air was cool against his skin. Clara was waiting for him near the garden's entrance, her expression warm as she saw him approach. "Did you say goodbye?" she asked gently. Elliot smiled, a mix of sadness and peace in his eyes. "Not goodbye, just thank you." Clara nodded, her gaze steady. "You've come so far, Elliot. I hope you see that." "I do," he said, And it's because of people like you. You've been my anchor through all of this." Clara's eyes softened, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. As night fell, Elliot and Clara stood together on the balcony of Walcott Manor, looking out over the illuminated garden. The fountain glowed softly in the moonlight, and the paths sparkled faintly with dew. "This place feels different now," Clara said, her voice quiet but content. "Lighter, like it's finally free of all the weight it carried." Elliot nodded, his gaze steady. "It is, and so am I." Clara turned to him, her expression bright. "What's next for you, Elliot? Now that you've built this legacy, what will you do?" Elliot considered her question, a small smile playing at his lips. "I think it's time to live, to embrace everything I've learned and make the most of the time I have left." Clara's smile matched his. "That sounds perfect." They stood together in the quiet of the night, the stars above reflecting the promise of the future. For Elliot, the journey that had begun with pain and uncertainty had led him to a place of peace, love, and purpose. A legacy not just for Nathaniel, but for himself and everyone who would come after. And as he looked out over the garden, Elliot knew that the best chapters of his story were still ahead. The morning air was crisp and clear as Elliot Harper walked the paths of the garden one last time before the day's visitors arrived. The roses glistened with dew, their vibrant petals a testament to the care and dedication that had gone into restoring the space. Each step along the winding paths felt like a journey through time, a reminder of the past he had uncovered and the future he was helping to build. Clara joined him, her footsteps soft on the gravel. "You're out here early," she said, smiling as she fell into step beside him. Elliot nodded, his hands resting lightly in his pockets. "I wanted to take it all in. This place, it's become more than I ever imagined." "It's more than just a garden now," Clara said. "It's a symbol of love, forgiveness, and growth." Elliot looked at her, gratitude in his eyes. "And it wouldn't exist without you. You've been part of every step of this journey." Clara blushed, her smile shy but genuine. "I've been honored to be part of it, and to see you transform into the person you were always meant to be." Elliot chuckled softly. "I didn't do it alone. I had help, from Nathaniel, from Eleanor, and from you." They continued walking, the silence between them filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The fountain came into view, its soft trickle of water creating a serene backdrop. Elliot paused, taking in the scene before him. "This is where it all began," he said, his voice thoughtful, "and where it's all come together." Clara nodded, her gaze steady. "It's the heart of everything you've built." Later that day, the garden filled with visitors, families, students, and community members who had come to see the restored space and learn more about the Walcott Foundation. Elliot mingled among them, listening to their stories and sharing the vision behind the foundation. The warmth and enthusiasm he encountered reaffirmed his belief in the work he was doing. Evelyn approached him as he stood near the fountain, her expression softer than he had ever seen it. "Elliot," she began, her tone hesitant, "I wanted to say thank you for everything you've done, for Nathaniel, and for this family." Elliot met her gaze, his voice gentle. "It's not just for him, it's for all of us." Evelyn nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You've given us something to believe in again." "I think he would have been proud." Her words lingered with Elliot as the day went on, each interaction deepening his sense of purpose. The garden was no longer just a tribute to the past. It was a beacon of hope, a space where lives could be transformed and new stories could begin. As evening fell, Elliot stood on the balcony of Walcott Manor, looking out over the illuminated garden. The paths glowed softly under the lights, and the fountain sparkled like a jewel in the moonlight. Clara joined him, her presence as steady and comforting as ever. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice quiet. "It is," Elliot agreed, his tone filled with contentment. "But it's more than that. It's alive. It's growing." Clara turned to him, her smile warm. "Just like you." Elliot chuckled, his gaze shifting to the stars above. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I've found my place, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Clara slipped her hand into his, her touch grounding him. "You've created something extraordinary, Elliot, and I know this is just the beginning." They stood together in the quiet of the night, the garden below a testament to love, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. For Elliot, the journey that had begun with a single letter had brought him to this moment, a moment of peace, purpose, and infinite possibility. And as he looked out at the world he had helped to shape, he knew that the legacy he was building would endure far beyond his own lifetime, carrying forward the lessons of the past and the hope of the future. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.